Hello and welcome to the Varietal Show. My name is Rory, and if you've never been here before, you're watching Varietal Literature's YouTube page, which is a little cozy corner of the internet for narrative. And what we're going to do here tonight is weave a narrative, or something close to it. We're going to play a solo tabletop RPG, where we embody the personality of a wizard, slowly destroying his life to create a grimoire, which is the namesake of spells. Pardon me. Now, that assumes that my computer holds up. It was being a little fussy right before I came on, and I definitely was nervous. Usually if it's going to crash, it crashes on the transition, so hopefully we'll be okay. Anyways, if you don't want to hear any of this, if you just want to get to the explanation of the game, which is going to consume some time today, you can, if you're not watching live, down in the description below, click on timestamps. Timestamps will take you to like key points in the video and skip you ahead to whatever it is that interests you, including just finding out what we came up with at the end. This is one of those games where I suspect we're going to spend most of today creating our character like we did with Lunar Echoes in the last 2 weeks. Well, we spent the first week doing it and then the second week writing. It is one of the reasons I haven't played it to this point, even though it has always interested me. But like I said, middle of summer is the time to be doing these sort of two shots. The problem, of course, is when you do two things in a row, the novelty wears off and people drop off. So do let me know, though, because there's two ways I can handle this before I get to the game in general. There's two ways I can handle this if you're a regular viewer. I can pre-build a character, come to the stream with the pre-built character, and we can just get into mechanics. The problem with that, of course, is everybody has less of a connection and understanding of what we came up with. Or I can do this, where we spend a session on these more complex games, creating our character, making sure everybody sort of has a piece in it, and then the following week, play through with the mechanics with that character. You guys let me know which one works for you. I suspect some of you are going to be like, Rory, you're so great. We'll watch you whatever, because that's usually what people say. That's not me being narcissistic. But beyond that, let me know which one works better for you, because I've done it both ways now over the last 6 months, and I'm just curious which one works. With that said, I'm going to have a drink of one of my favorite things, which is a sugarless silver can drink. I'm not advertising on my stream. Which I rarely have these days, but I came into some recently. Anyways, let's get to the story. This part of the show is called Lit Games. Lit Games stands for Literature Games, and it is the show. Literature Games is my catch-all for what is a genre, several different names for these kind of games, whether it's lyric games, solo tabletop RPG is a really common one, narrative-focused role-playing games, things like that. It's not just that, there's also world-building games and stuff in there that we've played. Tonight's, though, is a role-playing game. And it is one called Grimoire. Grimoire. Which, as is sort of indicated by its unique text or font style, is a game about glyphs and magic and so on. And the hook for it is pretty interesting if you're a person like me who plays a lot of these, a lot of tabletop RPGs on and off stream. And whose two mainstay games are medieval fantasy games, so Pathfinder and D&D. Because it's a game about building a grimoire, which is, in other words, a book of spells. And in those kind of games like D&D and whatever else, usually you just find the spells already done. Books created by some ancient wizard, and then you can take their spells out of it. Some spells are just standard and there's known creators. Like I mentioned Mordenkainen in the the advertising for this, which for some of you isn't going to mean anything, but for the select group of nerds that are probably well targeted by this solo tabletop RPG, they're going to know who Mordenkainen is. Anyways, creators of spells. And it takes an interesting approach to how to do that. It is complex. It does require a fair bit of stuff, which I know some of my audience doesn't like. But at the very least, it requires a deck of cards organized in a certain way. It requires that you pick a book. It doesn't matter which book, but, it should be a book probably that you like or whatever. I'm going to pick my personal friend, a very close and personal friend who we constantly text Instagram stuff to each other about cats, Joseph Gagawinaganasam, who is, and because I'm sure you guys don't know how to spell that, it is, excellent book, which I did our book club reading of My Indian Summer, which is a thing I have not abandoned, by the way, for the few people that were a part of that. Avalon did recommend like 3 different books last year, and I just didn't have the energy, and as I found out later, for medical reasons I didn't understand at the time. But I'm doing better now, so I am considering redoing that. But anyways, the Big Van Book Club covered My Indian Summer. It's still up on there if you want to read them and then see our sort of responses to the sections of the book that we read. But I really recommend this. This is a genuinely great book. Obviously, I'm biased. I really like Joe, but I watched him develop this book over many years, and it's an excellent book. This book advertisement, though, isn't the point. The point is, this is the book I'm using. You need to have a book for this. You'll understand later why. You need to have a deck of cards, and it's a good idea that you have dice as well. They don't seem to describe exactly what dice, but if you have a standard set, and from what I saw looking through the rules today, a standard set of D&D dice will do you fine, but at least 2 D6s and a D20 from what I've seen so far. The deck that you use has to have its jokers, and it should have one joker who's red and one joker who's black. My jokers are both technically black, but one of them has a dude with red on him, and one does not. So, these are, I'm going to use as my black and red jokers in there, and those are very important mechanically in the game. Okay, so those are the bits and pieces that you need. Now, one thing I am going to say right up front is part of the reason why me posting up this stream came so late in the day is I had spent pretty much all day reading through this rule book, and it was a struggle to understand at times. And there's a couple of reasons why I think that is, but I think probably the biggest thing is some of the information is kind of out of order. The pages at like page 15 are referencing something that isn't really described till page 30, and so I'm like, I don't really know what that means. And then later I found it out as I read on. I still don't feel like I have supreme confidence in my grasp of all of it, but we are going to go through this together, and we're going to create our own little wizard. And I'm hoping that we get to the point where we can actually start pulling out some cards and making spells, because the system for doing that is pretty cool. It both involves story prompts, and it involves that book that you chose as a part of a device for helping name them. And it also involves, which we're not going to be able to get too much in this stream because I can't run a drawing program at the same time or my computer will literally explode in my own face. But it involves a system for drawing magical glyphs associated to it that are associated to card draws. So it's a really interesting system if you're interested in the concept of being a wizard writing a wizard book. A grimoire, a book of spells. And it has interesting mechanics. It's a little darker than I thought it was going to be. We'll get into that. But also, as a warning, it's not super cheerful, happy bunny time kind of game. It is sort of a bit dark fantasy. And it seems to be structured somewhat around the idea that we go kind of lose our mind doing it. which is appealing to me, but maybe not to everybody. So that's the overview of it. It's a card drawing prompt based game with some use of dice and some other stuff that's mainly about creating spells and the sort of events that occur around us trying to create these spells and what their effects are and so on. Zombie Wolf is here, Tammy Morelli is here, and GS is here, and Witchery says they are going to be late. Well, Witchery, I don't know. Might have to time you out. I don't even think I know how to do that. I don't know if you can do that on the YouTube Live. I think you can just ban people. There's probably a way to time out. No, that's fine. I realize people have a life, and it doesn't involve always involve sitting for 2 hours to watch a grown man play games. Okay. GS says, "Oh no, not Happy Bunny time." I as a note though to Witchery, speaking of Witchery, I feel the need to add, I'm sure it makes no actual difference, but in case you're curious, that this was an Australian, I believe it's an Australian creator, because it won an Australian role-playing industry award for best rule system of 2021. Okay. Let's get to creating our character. And as we do, hopefully the game becomes clearer. So chat, we got to be a wizard. A part of that being a wizard is we got to have a name. It could be a super wizardy name. They have a prompt system that I'm going to try, but we're welcome to use other systems for it. We got to give our wizards values and their goals. And then we have to define some bonds, 4 specifically, which become associated to specific suits in the deck. So 4 bonds, 4 suits. 2 of them are bad, 2 of them are good. All of them end badly. Well, you'll see what I mean. All of them end anyways. Okay, so that's the gist. That's the minimum I would like to get through. So I'm going to read a little bit of the text of this book, but we're going to start putting together a wizard who's obsessed with writing a grimoire. Grimoire is an authoring solo role-playing game that has you take on the role of wizard undertaking magical research. You will engage with Grimoire by creating a grimoire, a tome of magical research. It will be filled with the spells your wizard creates, along with journal entries that describe your wizard's life. So I'm going to pause there to make sure that we understand what I just said. We are going to create a spell book, and I think if you were playing this on your own, I'm just going to mash this all together on the same Google Doc so everyone can see what I'm doing. But if I was playing this on my own, I'd probably buy like a little notebook and make that the spell book, and then just have some other book for the actual journal entries about what the development of those spells entailed. But that's what it's describing. By the end of the game, you will have created an artifact that can be used in other role-playing games. That is what initially interested me. Now, I don't know if that's true, because there's nothing about this that would necessarily make them balanced for other role-playing games. But it is an interesting idea to create your own spell book for D&D or Pathfinder or whatever else. Okay, so to begin play, we will create our wizards following the instructions in your wizard section of this book, which we're just going to get to now. Once you've created your wizard, you go to the playing the game section, and then it says something about experienced players, which we're not. Okay. So, the following materials are required to play Grimoire. A deck of playing cards, including both jokers, which I have here. I've also already split off the face cards because it told me to do that. A means to record journal prompts and draw spell glyphs. And a reading book of your choice, which was My Indian Summer for me, but you're welcome to choose another one if you folks want to. And an assortment of dice, which they consider optional. I like the dice. Okay. So, I see that Zombie Wolf, unsurprisingly, already has an excellent name, which is Hydrianius. Hydrianius? I saw, as I was midway through the word, I saw the I, and now I'm not sure how it fit in. And I think we can go with that, but I do want to at least try this rolling table for the name creator, because it's very interesting. So the first thing you must create is a name for your wizard. Names have a power, which is why some wizards invoke spells in their name. Blah, 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 blah. It gives advice on names. Okay, so it gives us a prefix and a suffix. And it requires us to roll a d20. D20 twice. 1 for the prefix, 2 for the suffix. First one is an 18, which is Thys. And the second one is a 7. So Thestir is what it would have come up with. Hydrios. Oh, no. Deleted it. Changed their mind, I guess. And then it gives us a title table, which I am going to use because I think this is delightful. And it does a D66 system here, which is a choice. I don't quite understand why it's a D66, but in the middle of the book. But anyways, D66 systems work by rolling 2 dice and putting 1 number in the first position, 1 number in the second position. You're not adding them together with a D66. Drop the dice. I don't know where it went. I'm sure my cat will find it and chew on it. Anyways, so we're going to roll 2 D6s. Now, the thing about a D66 system is it only really works if it doesn't matter which order you put them in, because then it's kind of up to the player choice. There are some ways that D66 is approached to eliminate that. Hydrianios. So I got a 16 here, which is the Warlock, or it could be 61, which is the Spark. Hydrenius? Is it Hydrenius? Hydrenius rolls the most off the tongue. So do we want Hydrenius the Warlock or Hydrenius the Spark? That I will leave up to chat. He says, knowing he'll get 2 completely different votes. Usually. That's not always the way it goes. Yes, a Spark. Hydrenius the Spark. That's a very interesting title. I like that. That is right, Rory. Well, that's great, because that's not a thing people usually say to me. Hydrenius the Spark. Okay. Also, I wonder where Jumpstore is. Maybe late, maybe busy. I mean, no one's obligated to show. All right. It says here, you may wish to consider how the wizard attained their title. If anyone wants to crunch into a sentence an idea of why we're called the Spark, go right ahead. Now we get to values and goals. The values of your wizard describe how they see the world. These will affect the way in which your wizard interprets the meaning of the spells and likely change throughout play. Though I will say it's not obvious to me if there's any mechanical necessity to change throughout play. But I do get the impression that sorry, just a second here. I do get the impression that what they're really saying there is that there is narrative reasons that your narrative will adjust that. He's mastering plasma manipulation. Had some accidents. When experimenting with plasma manipulation. Let's leave it like that. Okay. A single different value is assigned to each of the 4 suits. Now, I'm going to read this sentence because I read this sentence 15 times. And I still don't know if I really understand it. So chat, maybe you can help me out. A single different value. Now, I do want to add right now, I don't think value here means number value. Because it's in a section about, like your personal values. A single different value is assigned to each one of the 4 suits. And by suits, obviously they mean the deck of cards has 4 suits. Hearts, diamonds, clubs, and spades. Whenever the last prompt has been responded to of a bond or quest set, come back to that term in a minute, replace the value of the matching suit of the last card with a value that reflects how your wizard responded to that prompt. So, whenever the last prompt has been responded to, and I want to be clear, I have not skipped over pages here. They start talking about sets and quest sets, but they're not really discussed till like page 30. So I feel like there's something a little out of order about it. But I think what it's saying is, because this is the values table, like authenticity and balance and honesty and whatever else. I think what it's saying is, because as you draw cards, you get prompts from a list of prompts, story prompts. And we need to respond to them with, journal entries and whatever else. So of a bond or quest set. Now, a bond is like a person we know. It can be a bully or it can be like a good friend. Whenever the last prompt has been responded to of a bond, I'm going to ignore the quest set right now because I still don't feel like I understand those. Bonds, I think I do. Bonds come up. Bonds will be associated to certain suits as well. And bonds are when you pull certain cards of that suit 3 times, each time you get a little further along in the personal side story of that bond. So for example, you could have a bond with, let's say, some friend of yours, and the first time you run across a card associated to them, you talk to them about some fun time you had. Might be the prompt. That's the first prompt. The second time you come across them, they're talking about leaving town. And the third time you come across them, their house is empty and they've moved, right? So that's sort of the structure of how bonds work. And so what I think it's saying is whenever the last prompt has been responded to of a bond, so when you're at the third prompt of that bond, replace the value of the matching suit of the last card with a value that reflects how the wizard responded to that prompt. Which, is that them trying to say that the mechanical change of... Sorry. Is that a mechanical way of changing somebody's values or association to the... Are they saying that going forward when you get that suit, it's going to be associated to a different value now? I'm open to feedback on that this sentence is important and the one that I struggled the longest with understanding. Where did my D20 go? Losing dice all over the place. Maybe Witchery has a point. Okay. So it says pick a value for each suit and write your pair down. Write the pair down on the first page of your journal. So that's what we have to do right now. And this is done by rolling. We're going to take 2d6s. First one I rolled is a 6 and a 6, so 66, which is wisdom. And I'm just going to draw a random card out of here, whatever suit. GS says, I read it as discard the value number of the matching and replace it with the wizard's response value, e.g. 44 equals happiness. Sounds like you got it better than me. First card I draw is diamonds. So we'll associate diamonds to wisdom. Okay, re-rolling. We got a 14 or a 41. Let's see our choices here. We've got a 14, which is authority. 41 is fame. Chat, what do you prefer, authority or fame? Zombie Wolf says my brain was just doing the Windows booting sound. It's rare for me to sit and read it something aloud to myself. I would say I'm a little bit above average in reading comprehension, but I wouldn't say I'm amazing at it. But I'm above average, so it doesn't happen too often. And there were a couple of sentences in this, and that one above all else, I was like, woof. I think part of the problem is that my brain keeps wanting, because we're talking about cards, wanting to look to numerical values, and it's hard to lose that. Wow, everybody said authority. Okay. Also, I'm going to have to turn my air conditioning on. I know it's a little early, but it is humid and very warm today. I apologize for those who are wearing nice headphones. You will see here a little bit of background noise for a bit. I will try not to run it too long. Okay. Authority it is. So authority, and now let me pull a card from the deck. I promise you this game gets fun. The setup is takes a little bit. This is probably the least fun version of it. But it does get fun. It has a really cool premise to how it builds spells. Okay. Clubs to authority. That worked out well. I associate clubs to authority. Coercion. Zombie Wolf says, mark your calendar, Rory. This was a rarity. The day that I was dumber than a line of text. Okay, I'm rolling the dice again. No, that was a 66 again. Gotta roll these dice when I'm playing with my players so that my NPCs hit really hard. Okay, we either got 62 or 26, so let's see which one we come up with. 26 is competency, and 62 is peace. Chat, competency or peace? I will pick a card. I promise I've just randomly picked completely different suits every time. Just low odds for that to be happening. Oh, a Zombie Wolf says, or the day your chat agreed. Yeah, that's right. We have the most peaceful, how would I put this? A combative relationship based in peace and love. GS says peace. Okay. Well, Zombie Wolf says competency. It doesn't make sense to have authority and peace. These cards, their relationship are just how they're going to inform how we interpret the prompts on them. We can sort of... It doesn't really need to be consistent. I don't know how else to explain it. But we got two votes here. Oh, I found my other dice. Which means I gotta pull up my dice. Or my coin. Red will be competency. Blue will be peace. Blue is peace. Okay. Last one. This will be for spades. God, that one dice just keeps rolling a 6. 65 or 56? 56 is love. 65 is wealth. I know which one I would go with, but I'm not going to bias the crowd. So for spades, do we want love or wealth? Diamonds is wisdom, clubs is authority, hearts is peace. Zombie Wolf says, good enough, Rory with a shrug. Good enough. My motto. GS says, sorry I didn't think about making sense. I want that on a shirt. It's gonna be that's like my life motto. All right. Yes. Tammy says wealth, and GS says wealth if I have to make sense. You don't have to do anything. You guys are all independent. But wealth is what I would have gone with. Yeah. There is a currency in this game that we collect, so that makes sense. Okay, I'm going to put those cards back with the pile. Okay, so what have we done so far? We've given a name, a title. We've associated the suits of the cards to concepts, basically. Oops. Abstract concepts. Come on. Oh. And there we are. Let's move on. And I think I don't think there's any prompt for it exactly. But I do think we have to come up with a goal. I'm going to read this text again. Like I said, we're only on page 11 of... We're not going to go through all 30 pages to get to the playing, but yeah. Zombie Wolf says, GS just unintentionally made the perfect t-shirt that doesn't exist, so I can't buy it. Maybe that's how I'll make the money to cover my bills. I'll make a shirt that says, sorry, I didn't think about making sense, and put it, I don't know, one of those places that I'm sure is ethically questionable, like Redbubble. A goal is what your wizard is trying to achieve via magical research. The completion of this goal marks a positive end to the game and is tracked as a set of face cards, in other words, the Jack, King, Queen, and King, that you may add to by completing spells. Each time you add to the goal set, now when they say set, they mean you collect cards and you put them in their own little stack. Each time you add to the goal set, if the added card is the first... As I'm reading this, I remember this sentence. It's not, I think, as abstract as the other one, but this one was also a bit tough. Each time you add to the goal set. So each time you add to the set of cards that represent your goals being completed one way or another... If the added card is the first card of the set or has a matching suit in the set, then your wizard has made progress. You should include a description of how this spell has or will provide progress towards the goal within the relative journal prompts. I'm going to read this page from the beginning again. A goal is what your wizard is trying to achieve via magical research. The completion of this goal marks a positive end to the game and is tracked as a set of face cards, Jack, Queen, King, that you may add to by completing spells. Each time you add to the goal set. So, in other words, you will only add to the goal set when you complete a spell, which is a whole other thing we haven't gone into. Each time you add to the goal set, if the added card is the first card of the set, so the first time you add to your goal set, or has a matching suit with something already in the set, then your wizard has made progress, in other words, towards the end of the game, completing their goal in life. You should include a description of how this spell has or will provide progress towards the goal within the relative journal prompts. Once there are 3 cards with matching suits in the goal set, in the little cards that represent every time you completed a spell, your wizard has found success, in other words, completed their goal. The final journal entry should describe how your wizard accomplishes their goal. And as I understand it, that's the happy ending. Anyone out there has a different interpretation right now, please let me know. So I'm going to say that in my own words. Okay. We need to give our wizard a goal. The way that we're going to achieve that goal, because our goal is in general trying to build a spell book, is each time we successfully complete a spell, which costs money and requires pulling cards and stuff like that, each time we successfully complete a spell, we are able to add a card to a set of cards that represents our deck, our goal, our progress to our goal. Every time we add a card, either the first time we add a card or every time we add a card that matches a suit in the set already, some completed spells in the set already, we make progress on our goal and write a journal entry to that perspective. When we have 3 cards that match in sort of the hand, if you don't want to think of it as a set, of our goal cards, that's the end of the game. That's the happy ending. That's an end of the game. Gia says, I can see why you had to keep rereading sentences all day today, Rory. Yeah. It's tough to describe a game, I will say. You know what it is, Zombie Wolf? There is no way to drink from a can without exposing the, well, I mean, at least with the hand I usually use, without exposing the brand. Tammy Morelli says you never grow out of your inner goth. Society doesn't either. It just, in my era, it morphed into emo. Maybe it has a different name for Gen Z, but... And God help us, Gen Alpha, but for millennials it became emo. Now, that means we need to come up with our 1-sentence goal, and it's really going to define a lot of stuff in this game, so we need to think about this. We get no prompts for this, so this is raw creativity, chat. And when I do want it to be something we're on the same table with, we're at the... whatever. That is not the right turn of phrase. Anyways, they give us some examples, so I'm going to give us some examples here. Overthrow the current regime in the city. Speak with the great ones who created this world. Prove to the monarchy that I'm worthy of their name. Recover my long-lost love's most treasured possession. Something about, attain immortality. Bring an end to the war. Repay those who raised me. Earn the respect of my betrothed. Create a... I can't read that text. Create a lower to reach the stars. Something about reaching the stars. Maybe power? So, what kind of goals? We're probably not just going to take like one person's goal. We're going to have to kind of figure it out, given how consequential it is to the game. But what is our wizard's goal? So far we have Hydrenius, the Spark, who got that name from some accidents when experimenting with plasma manipulation. And their goal, again, like a sentence, can be anything, but it has to be something that would drive them to want to create a spellbook. So I'm going to give you guys a minute to think about that while I drink some water. GS says, creates a tower to reach the stars, what it says. Wow. I mean, maybe you're watching it on a larger screen than I am. It's like this big for me. This is how I'm gonna drink it from now on. Covering the logo. GS says that's not my choice. Yeah, those are just examples. Those aren't choices. We have to create our own goal. I mean, one place to draw from is why would you want to create a book of spells? What would be your final goal? The way that I sometimes put this to players who are coming in from to a D&D game for like the first time, especially if they're newcomers, I'll be like, your character should be, what are the three things? Curious, helpful, or greedy, I think was the three things I say to people. In other words, they need a reason that they would pursue stuff. Zombie Wolf says Gasp Rory is a Pepsi drinker. No. Indeed I am. And I don't particularly like cola. Coca-Cola. Just says that's hilarious to drink like that, Rory. Are we supposed to remember? I already forgot what I said. All those goals. No. We're supposed to come up with our own goal. Those are just examples goals. Those aren't our goals. We need to think about our character. We're going to be wizards. What is our goal? It's the only thing that matters here. The color of this light changed. So, like, one such goal could be, we want to be famous, right? You know, we've seen the historical creators of spells and we're inspired and we really want fame. Finally get our recognition after, being bullied as the wizard by all the barbarians in adventuring school. Other examples might be like, we finally want to successfully, I don't know, be able to change form or something. This is the tough part, because, like, when it comes to storytelling, too, if you folks are interested in that kind of stuff, the goal is always, it's always tough. It's got to be flexible, clear, compelling, those sorts of things. But what matters here, because this is a game, is what do we, as this character, want to do? Like, it could also be, like, GS says, we are wise, peaceful, wealthy, and authoritative. We are none of those things. Our character has not been defined. The association of the prompts to a value can be interpreted many different ways. We don't know quite who we are yet. We might... So, for example, hearts is peace. But we might interpret that as our value for peace is to, like, Orcus from D&D lore, who just wants to destroy every piece of life in the universe because he finds it annoying and he wants to be alone. Oh, I like that. I'm going to generalize it a bit, Zombie Wolf, because I know a bit about how the mechanics work, and it will work better as just we don't know how, but we're going to solve it. But I do like that. Spoiler alert, that is kind of the plot of Marvel's. A movie that did not review well, but I think was fun. I mean, at that point, it's a movie like, you're either into comic book movies or you're not. If you're not, you're gonna be like, this movie's stupid and I hate it. But if you're okay with comic book logic and the goofiness of a comic book, then it's a lot of fun. But yes, I like that idea, Zombie Wolf. So Zombie Wolf said, what if people are worried about the sudden chronic spells of cold weather they've been getting and are terrified of a severe famine? So Hydrianus... I'll get this. No, I won't. Hydra is trying to master plasma so he can make a secondary star to help out their current sun, give it a boost. Yes. So what we'll say is we'll leave it a little broad here. A long winter has come to, take a line from Game of Thrones. People fear that this one will not end. So maybe he's trying to find a way to either control or alleviate that problem, whether it's by controlling weather, creating the... Zombie Wolf says, I hate hero comic books, but I love graphic novels. Well, if you hate hero comic books, then you're not watching Marvel movies anyways. I also like graphic novel. I like them both. I do. Over time, I would say one has taken from the other in such a way that they've become a lot less independent from each other as an art form. The sort of really traditional pulpy hero comics, they're still around, but a lot of them tend into graphic novel arcs now. Anyways, I like that idea, though. I think there's a lot of flexibility there. He wants to control the weather in some way or control the temperatures in some way. Somehow save the world from... Well, let's face it. We're talking about climate change, metaphorically. Goal. Find a way to prevent... Hey, there's Jumpstore. Jumpstore had a migraine. Those suck. Was it like the properly painful migraine, or was it those weird ones where you can barely think and you get stuff in front of your eyes, or was it all of it? I get both. Sometimes, not very often. It's good to see you, though. Find a way to prevent the endless winter prophesized to bring ruin to his people. Okay. Bonds. Now this is why I said we're probably only going to get through character creation, because Bonds feels like it's going to be a bit of a slow one. But it is very important mechanically for this game. We're going to have 4 bonds. 2 are enemies, 2 are friends. Bonds. Your wizard will make enemies and friends of either individuals or groups. These bonds will support or debilitate your wizard throughout their studies and adventures. The 4 most influential important bonds at the time are tracked using a unique set of prompts given to a given playing card suit. Heart, diamonds, spades, and clubs. So again, we're going to associate some stuff to those suits. Now, you might be wondering, do these things overlap? Sort of, but actually the real structure of this game, if you've played a lot of tabletop RPGs, you've seen stuff like this, is where each round you pick an action, and each action has its own kind of algorithm you run, where you draw a certain amount of cards, you spend them a certain amount of stuff, or whatever else. And depending on what action we take, changes the meaning of those cards. Whenever you have an empty suit for a friend or foe, while you're responding to a research location or quest prompt, a character present in the narrative should fill the empty slot. Now this sentence, not as confusing as the last 2, that we got stuck on was one that doesn't necessarily its meaning wasn't obvious to me, because I don't understand why we would have an empty suit based on how this is set up. Anyways, you'll see what I mean. Friends are assigned to either hearts or diamonds, whereas foes are assigned to either spades or clubs, and select an appropriate bond set. Jumpstore says, all of the above, Roy. Oh boy, the works. When I first get a migraine coming on, I actually lose my central and peripheral vision, so I only have a tiny sliver of sight left. Thankfully, it goes away after about an hour. The rest of the typical migraine symptoms stay for the full 3 days. Oh, you got like proper migraines. Oof. I feel for you. I can luckily say that I don't share in that extent, and I never have. I've never had a 3-day migraine. Mine are mostly seem to be associated to various neck injuries I've had, which I don't know if that's just my own imagination. But I also drink like a ton of caffeine every day, and if I don't have it, I'll get migraines, which is also a known thing. But they're not like proper medical migraines like that, so I'll try not to talk too loud. Yeah, Jump Story. I was like in my 20s when I first got visual obstructions and a migraine, and I was driving, and I was like, well, this is weird. What is this? It wasn't quite as obstructive. It's more like the little floaty spots. But I was like on a highway driving, and I just was having trouble seeing, and I was like, what is this? Yeah. Sorry to preteen Jump Store. It's miserable. Okay. I guess maybe one way you would have an empty suit for a friend or foe is if you had completed their bond quest, if you will. Maybe that's what this means. Okay, your wizard will make enemies and friends of either individuals or groups, and so now we need to talk about what those enemies are friends. So your wizard starts the game with 4 bonds. I do feel like I am getting a headache today, and it feels like it might be a migraine, but we're finger crossed, hoping it's not. But I probably will take some Advil after the stream. Not like a crippling headache. I don't want anybody to have like an empathetic response here. I wouldn't, if it was truly that bad, I'd just cancel the stream, because this is a brain game and you can't do that if you have a headache. Your wizard starts the game with 4 bonds. So that's what we got to do. We got to come up with 4 bonds. And the way you do that is you write down a name and a sentence that describes who they are to the wizard, like how we relate to them. And then we assign that bond to a suit, and then select a matching bond prompt set. So I will tell you what that looks like in a minute. But I'm going to give you the examples so you guys can start thinking about it. Remember, of these 4 bonds, 2 are going to be friends, 2 are not. 2 are enemies, foes. Okay, so the examples they give is hearts is the listener, and that won't make any sense yet because I'll show you the page, but this is how they describe a bond. Again, we don't need to describe them too much because we're going to find out about them as we do prompts through the gameplay. Brandor Lezix, we were both the only wizards in town worth our ink. Jor the Fish, a scrappy and optimistic purveyor of strange goods. An enemy here, Fifi Company, a concerning local gang of deserters. The Stinct, a fellow resident in my tower that creates microscopical beasts. There's a lot of variety here. So, while you guys think about who our 2 enemies and our 2 friends are, I'm just going to show you what they mean by, like, a bond set or quest or whatever. So, the heart bonds means that when we do something with a bond, which is an action we can take, if we draw a heart, the bond prompts that are tied to the heart suit all remove 1 wound from your wizard once you respond to the prompt. So heart bonds are people that heal us because we can take wounds. If we take 3 wounds, really, if we take 4 wounds. So if we take 3 wounds and then 1 more, on that 1 more, the game ends. So one of the things we'll be trying to manage is wounds. Wounds can be psychological and mental, but they can also be physical. So in general, it means a heart friend is someone who does healing on us. And there are a few examples of how this prompt system works. The first one is the listener. The next one is the diner. And the third one is the fair weather. So the listener, the first prompt you get if you pulled the listener, in other words, you pulled a hearts on a bond thing, is you sat for tea with your friend that closely listens. What did you rant about? And then we would write that in our journal. The second one is your friend made time for you, but they seemed distracted. What did you not notice? And the third one was the only thing left at your friend's house was a satchel of tea and a note. What did the note say? So you can see how each of these bonds ends and has kind of defined paths. But then we can also pick to associate the heart friend to the fair weather, which is your friend arrived at your study one night. What recent success did they ask about? Your friend loudly bragged about you to people that passed by. What did your friend say? You tried to vent to your friend, but they kept dodging around the topic before reluctantly listening. Why were they not interested? So basically, let's say we wanted to come up with, Jimmy the Pop Weasel, a man who summons weasels. That's his whole magic. We all found out about that as I said it. And let's say he's one of the fair weathers. So that means our first bond would be Jimmy's our heart. He's a fair weather set. So when we draw a heart in a bond quest, we're talking to Jimmy. And the first time we draw it, it's Jimmy coming to our study and asking us about what recent success that we had. Jumpstore says the satchel of tea and a note sounds like how Astra would abandon Rune if she ever wanted to. If anyone out there in Chatland or in Lurkland wonders what that means, you should watch my Lunar Echoes playthroughs. We are 2 episodes into that at this point, but there might be more right now. I have made separate playlists for my repeating playthroughs, so I have stuff for our Trove stuff. Probably the most popular one I do is the Floating Bookshop, which I think is up to 3 episodes, and will be probably 4 before the end of the summer. And I also have one for Lunar Echoes. GS says, well, I'd like a diner friend. Absolutely. Diner it is. What's our diner friend's name? So the diner prompts are: your friend hailed you across the street to sit down for a meal with them. What did you share to eat? Your friend invites you to dine amongst the wealthy and pays for your meal. Who opened this new establishment? And the final prompt is: you enjoy a humble meal at your friend's home amongst packed belongings. Why are they leaving? You'll notice that the third prompt is usually somehow about them leaving or dying or whatever else. So the diner. I guess I can just keep associating it up to here. The diner. Oop. What's the name of our diner friend? You know what? We can use the name prompt system. We're on page 14? Okay. Alright. 2 D20s. That's a 9. Rack. and a 4. Rakamir. Rakamir? Rakamir. And then the title is done by the D66 system. The name prompt is fun and uncomplicated. Yeah, I like this system actually for naming things. It recognizes that one of the hardest things to do on the fly is come up with good names. So it's a 14 or a 41. So they're either a star speaker or the grumpy. I don't even know if I'm going to ask. I think it's just going to be the grumpy. Rakamir the Grumpy. So Rakamir the Grumpy is a friend of ours who we mainly go and have meals with. That's how we associate to each other. They're probably another caster or wizard at or university or whatever you want to call it. What would you say is their trait? I mean, as a diner, how do you associate that to magic? Zombie Wolf says, as much as I love my father country, we literally have a history of unimaginative and terrible names. Well, as a person who is mostly Scottish, let me tell you, you have no idea. You have no idea how unimaginative and repetitive names can be in the history of your people. GS has a plate that never empties. So, he is a wizard of the satiating arts, let's say. A pioneer of the satiating arts and aroma design. I don't know what that means, but sometimes that's the best thing to do. Okay, so that's our hearts. So if we go back to our diamond bond, a diamond bond are associated to money. So we're still into friendly territory. The bond prompts that are tied to the diamond suit all gain you 1 coin. Zombie Wolf says, in ancient Rome, the boys were all named after their fathers and their uncles, and girls were literally given the female version of their family names, such as Julia being the female version of Julius. Yeah, I mean, the way that manifests in a lot of Anglo stuff is you get a lot of son of and son, and then you get things like Stephen's son, Jason, stuff like that. Well, not Jason. Yeah, because I guess that's just how people used to know you. Okay, diamond bonds, bond prompts. So these are people that give us money that are friendly with us. The investor, the donor, and the guilty. So, for example, the guilty archetype. Oh yeah, GS says Richardson. The guilty archetype. A shop owner approached you and gifted over a coin. What did they mention of your appearance that inspired them to give you aid? A shop owner approached you and gifted a coin. What were you doing that inspired them to give you aid? Did they mean to put the same prompt twice? A shop owner looked at you with disgust. Why did they throw some coin your way and tell you to leave? The investor's path is you strolled through the park with your friend. How did you convince them to fund your project? Your friend seemed excited for your progress. What did you tell them about your research? Your friend seemed exasperated as you explained your research. Why have they lost interest? Remember, the last prompt is always like, why we break apart. So what the donor is like a similar thing, but some friend of ours sends us money and then tells us about their life. Which one are we interested in? The investor, the guilty shopkeeper, or the donor? As associating to diamonds. Chum Store says Richardson. I hear Dixon. Dixon is a name as well. I think son of a dick should be a slur. Well, like an insult. I agree, GS. I think we need an investor for this project. Investor, okay, what? Well, diamonds. Oops. Let me roll me some names. Unless you have a name out there in chat land that you want for our investor. $18 is Thies. We already got that earlier. I'm rolling it again. 19 is Ever. That's promising. And 12, Evernora. Evernora. I'll roll it one more time. See if I like the other one more. No, that Ikra? That doesn't mean anything. Evernora. Evernora. That's a very unique name. Evernora. Okay, and then 2d6. 24 or 42. So 24 is the athwart. Well, I'll fully admit I don't know what that means. Let me look that up. Athwart. From side to side of a cross. A long counter thrown athwart the entrance. Oh, maybe I have heard this word. It's just out of context. I'm going to guess they're drawing on its definition as an opposition or counter, like they are contradictory by nature. Or it could be 42, which is the ancient. Zombie Wolf says Platonian, and then gives me a pronunciation guide for it. Thank you. The athwart or the ancient? GS says athwart. Yeah, Evernora doesn't sound like a banker, does it? We're going with Platonian. Just changed their mind. Ancient is better. Well, now I gotta leave it up to a vote. Chat, athwart, so a contrarian, or ancient. Zombie Wolf says Plato being the god of wealth. Yes. Yeah, I figured that's what you were drawing on. Also being the original snob of intelligentsia. Platonian athwart, the investor. So they're a friend that sends us money. Zombie Wolf says ancient. Okay. Getting Ebenezer vibes. Well, they gotta be our friends, so they can't be too Ebenezer-ish. You strolled through the park with your friend. How did you convince them to fund your project? Yeah, that's fair, Jump Store. Seems like everybody is on the side of the ancient. I don't know that a thwart made any sense for an investor. My appeal of it was just that it had obvious drama and character trait to it. But no, you guys are correct. Ancient makes more sense. Platonian the Ancient. What is our sentence for him? He's old and he's accumulated money and he's investing money in our project, whose goal is to either control the weather or control the sun or something like that to stop the Everwinter or something is what I was calling it. Which is one N from copyright infringement with Hasbro. But my instinct is that he would have his own selfish reasons for doing it. Maybe he runs like a series of farms and he sees these spells as a way to like make sure that his farms outgrow anybody else's. Like maybe he has insidious intentions. GS says, believe it or not, I chose Ancient, but I said Athwart. Didn't sound investorish, but botched all those texts. That's okay. Botching texts is a part of the culture of texting. Yeah, I'm going to go with my idea. Sorry, chat, if you had your own. There's a delay, and I control the Google Doc. Wasn't Lily Ancient. An old friend of your father's, maybe? Who runs a series of, I don't know, vineyards. If you guys want him to grow something else. He believes our work could allow him to control the weather and temperatures around his vineyards and outgrow his neighbors, his competitors. Okay. Now we got to get to two enemies. So the spade bonds. When you pull a spade, these bond prompts are tied to the spade suit, and they all gain 1 wound. So running into them means that they like punch us or something. When we finally complete their line, though, we remove this bond. So, as I was saying earlier, that's probably what they mean by empty suit, because I didn't quite pick up that these bonds will be, when they're completed, you assign a new one. Witchery says, well, I'm unbelievably late. That's okay, Witchery. It's mostly been a setup stream. So I don't know how interesting those are to you, but I wouldn't say it was overly essential. It's a setup stream for something that I hope to play more of next week. Okay. When we finally finish one of these bonds, we will gain 3 coins and remove that bond. So these are enemies. There are 3 that they give us for the spade: the bully, the rival, and the nobility. So the bully is some person that basically, I mean, it's a bully. Someone who calls us names, talks about us behind our back. And it ends with this very ominous sentence: your foe arrived alone at your tower in the middle of the night. Why will they not bother you in the future? The rival is somebody who tries to like compete with you. I won't go through the whole line. I did read some of these earlier. The nobility, the foe spoke of you at a party you both attended. Why did this leave you feeling insulted? And eventually it leads to the final prompt, which is you uncovered a secret plot to assassinate your foe. How did you use it to your advantage to rid yourself of their annoyance? So our foe can be our bully, our rival, or our nobility. This is for the spade bond, and every time we encounter them, we will suffer a wound, which again can be sort of mental or physical or whatever else. Witchery says they are doing awful, and everyone was conspiring to make me do more errands, which didn't help things. Well, that sounds terrible. Are you still feeling sick? They making you do errands while you're sick? GS says they think you should be better by now. They don't get it. No, they don't. Anyways, this is YouTube. There's no such thing as late. Which one's speaking to us, chat? The bully, the rival, or the nobility? Who should be our first foe? Keeping in mind that through the course of the game, we'll probably have more than one foe. Witchery says, no one even makes me a sandwich when I'm sick. Well, that's rude. I'm lucky enough to have had people in my life that take care of things when I'm really sick. What is your favorite sandwich, Witchery? If somebody was to make you a sandwich and you to be happy about it. I know you said that you lost your taste. I hope it's coming back, but imagine that hasn't happened. Zombie Wolf says nobility. Jumstore says rival. We do have to pick one here. I do like both the nobility and the rival. Like, I feel like they're good prompts on both of them. Well, you know what we do when we have two choices. Whoops. We flip the red and blue coin of Metroid. Blue is the rival. Red is nobility. It's red. Nobility it is. Oh no, never mind. I didn't have to flip the coin because a new vote came in from Witchery for the rival. Sorry, Zombie Wolf, you've been outvoted. And there's Tammy with the rival. Okay, I should just wait longer is what should happen. The rival is associated to the spade, is that correct? Let me double check that. Yes. Alright. Witchery says, I like chicken and salad or cheese and tomato. Well, I'm not so big on tomatoes, at least the kind of tomatoes I get here in Canada, which is like textured water. I have had heirloom tomatoes with like some salt, and those were pretty good. Or any form of tomato where some of the water has been drawn out, I'm into. But chicken and salad sounds delicious as bread. Now, at the risk of making myself sad, what kind of bread do you like? Oh, somebody's already asked that. Witchery says, any bread really, a nice white if they have it. Make a lot of grilled sandwiches when I have energy. Oh, yeah. Grilled sandwiches. Well, chat is metaphorically making you a metaphorical sandwich. It's a nice chicken salad sandwich. Do you like mayo? You mayo person? I'm a mayo person. In particular, I really like Japanese mayo, Kewpie mayo, but some people don't like the acidity of that. Zombie Wolf says, I love tomatoes so much that I literally eat them out like apples. Is that stereotypical? It's stereotypical of Italian. Yeah, which makes sense. I don't say that as a joke. Like in Italy, just you'll pick it. A lot of stuff is just picked fresh, tasty tomatoes with something else on it. Whether it's just some olive oil and balsamic vinegar or maybe some sliced mozzarella. Like, that's a thing. Witcher says, I do like mayo. People are really weird about it. They really are. Okay. Rival. What's our rival's name? Let's go do the game. Again, you're welcome to recommend names. Oops. 16 is Ipra. And 2 is Iprasor? Iprasor. Well, I'm at least re-rolling one of these. Jumstore says, my favorite bread is brioche, and I don't like mayo. Yeah, you like it when the butter's in the bread, apparently. Well, you can't see it, but just off screen here is, in my row of books, is Jack Pepin's techniques. And for those who don't know Jack Pepin, he still makes videos. He was sort of the original TV cook who was a real cook, not just a celebrity. He used to rather famously have a show with Julia Child, who was a very eccentric personality, but also an excellent host and cook. Anyways, she and him used to have a show where he described cooking. He's a very, very thick French accent kind of guy. And his book of techniques is techniques. And he has a technique in there for brioche that I've done before, back when I ate wheat, where he wraps it around a wheel of brie. And the way that he makes it, which is a fairly traditional way of making brioche, is you put chunks of butter in the dough, and then you smack the dough at the table. You just like throw it, and the energy of that disperses the butter into the bread. And it's the most fun I've ever had making bread, because it is literally, you're just getting mad at dough and throwing it at a thing, and then you wrapped it around brioche, and then you baked it in the oven. Oh, it was so good. I never made it again because I don't want to know how many calories were in it, and it was a lot of work, as is a lot of French cooking. But it was a delight. I've made a lot of things in that book, just for the hell of it. Zombie Wolf says, as a Sicilian, I have no palate for mayo. Not even like ones that are based in olive oil, like I forget the name of it, but it's a regional Italian thing. It's an emulsified olive oil that's basically mayonnaise. Jumpstore says, I just got called out by Rory and he's not wrong. Butter's good. Witchery says, when I don't like his margarine, I'd rather have nothing butter adjacent. I can't really trust margarine anymore. I'm okay with it. It's not my favorite. I don't really like Miracle Whip. I'm not shading anyone who does, but I don't get it. Tammy says, speaking of sandwiches, my daughter came over and made me a whole bunch of egg salad sandwiches with hand-chopped bread and butter pickles. Ooh, butter pickles. And ghost pepper cheese. Wow, that sounds like good. I am, here's something Zombie Wolf can appreciate. I am obsessed with olive oil. I wasn't for a long time, and I will tell you the story on how that works before I forget what I'm doing. I don't like either of these names, so I'm re-rolling. Nope, that's 19 again. 3 is Craw. That's more promising. 9 is Crawfeld. That's better. There's no Miracle Whip here, says Witchery. Good. I kid. I don't want to give people a hard time. I know that people like it. It's just very strange. It has, like, on the surface a kind of texture and idea like mayonnaise, but it's a lot more acidic, and it's technically kind of like a salad dressing, but thick. It's odd. $32 or $23. $23 is the Magus, which is just a magic user, and $32 is the Diviner. So our rival, is it the Magus or the Diviner? Witchery says, but how am I meant to make Minnesota salads that aren't really salads? Very true. I'm still not sure if it's meant mayo or whipped cream or what. I bet some of them are made with whipped cream originally. Because that's a thing in Southern cooking. Yeah, I had to... I'm sure I've told this story on stream. I'm sure I have. So I apologize if I have. As you guys tell me if you want the Diviner or the Magus for our rival who's named Crawfeld. Anyways, I got stuck in a mall for like 2 hours. I just had 2 hours I had to kill. I wasn't like locked in. I just didn't have anything to do. And I saw this shop that was an olive oil shop, but it was like had these special metal containers, and you had to like go and you could taste them. And in my head, even as a person who was really into cooking and food back then, because I have been my whole life, I was like, it's an oil. I mean, olive oil has a taste, and it's, you know, it's got its place. But come on, do you need a whole shop of just olive oil? So I went in almost like ironically. It was like a joke to myself. And it was the best thing I've ever done. If I had ever planned to have children, they will not equal. Their birth would not equal the moment when I discovered what fresh olive oil was like. Not only that, this is where I lose Zombie Wolf, discovered that Italian olive oil was not my favorite. I actually really liked South American olive oils. And so we have a couple of these little shops around here where it's no oil's more than a year old, which is sort of fresh for oil. It's definitely pure. Things like that. Unbelievable. I mean, it depends on what you like and taste. It does kind of burn the back of the throat. And it has, you know, a strong kind of grassy taste because it's olives. I spend too much money on olive oil. Not anymore because I don't really have any money for it. But when I had money, I would go and buy every couple of weeks a bottle of these fancy olive oils. Zombie Wolf says, I don't really care for butter either. I prefer using olive oil in place of buttered bread. I'll go either way. Depends on what I'm making. I don't really have a strong feeling about either. I like both butter and olive oil. Magus GS says, Zombie Wolf says the Diviner. Jump Store says, I don't think I know what a Magus is or does, so I'm going with Diviner. Witchery says a Magus is a magic user. Yeah, it's that simple. It's just a person who uses magic. Witchery says we have some local olive groves, as in local to my town. Oh, wow. No, nothing like that would grow here. Okay, so that is, I think, enough votes for Diviner. So, Crofeld the Diviner. What defines our rivalry? What's he trying to do? And then we have one more bond after this, which will also be an enemy. And then I think we're about done with this for now. I might, if we have enough time, do a bit of an introduction to our character. Studying in their study or something, so we have some writing. Yum, that was delicious, unbranded liquid. I don't have a lot of rivalries in my life. I don't think I come up a lot in people's thoughts. So, I'm not sure what to put. I know that parody, Zombie Wolf. I feel like those movies get too harshly judged. I think they belong to a genre that is more a series of like little snippets of jokes, and there's just so many jokes a minute that either you're on board with that style or not. But I think they are clever. Cleverer than people give them credit for. The olives even had a popping sound as they changed colors. Well, maybe he disagrees with how we get our magic. Maybe because he's a diviner, he disagrees with our maybe more grounded approach to magic. He disagrees with, not digresses, disagrees. Well, I guess it would help if I would type right. He disagrees with our using natural forces for magic and believes this to be heresy. Instead, thinks all magic should echo a divine source. There we go. Okay, one more bond. One more bond and then we're out. I think it's clubs. People whine that parody movies are bogged down by pop culture references. I mean, I guess that's fair. It does. All that really does is contain it to its time. But I mean, not everything needs to be timeless. Okay. Club bonds. A bond prompt. Zombie Wolf says, "Bro, my parents were still in middle school in the 80s. I don't understand any of this reference. I'm not going to say how old my parents were in the 80s. Or me. Bond prompts are tied to the club suit. All gain 1 wound for your wizard once you respond to the prompt, unless you remove 2 coin. Oh, so they're like hustlers. So we either take a wound or we lose money. The final prompt will have you remove that bond. Okay, so these are people that are hustling us in some way. The thug, so a guy who, I mean, he's the thug. Do I need to explain it? You know what the word the thug means. The supernatural, at the stroke of midnight, you saw your foe, not foam, but not before it saw you. How did it harm you? So this is like some ghost or spirit or wraith. And the assassin. Your foe attacked you during your morning walk. What did they drop when they fled? Your study was ransacked. What was missing and what made you believe it was your foe? Someone in a crowd had your item and you followed them into a trap laid by your foe. How did you deal with your foe? And so on and so forth. So, we need one more enemy for the clubs. The thug, who's just a guy who's going to rough us up and steal stuff. The supernatural, some sort of haunting spirit, or the assassin. Some store says, Sorio's wish I was more helpful in these prompts. Don't feel any pressure. Just feel better. There's another shirt. Not as good as the other one, which was, sorry, I didn't know we were making sense, was it? Or whatever else. I didn't know I had to make sense. I remember when I was young, it was more, yeah, I'm with you, Zombie Wolf. I don't even know why I asked. Witchery wants the supernatural, but Zombie Wolf, I'm really interested in having an assassin on us. I feel like maybe that would fit with some of the friends turning out to be evil. Witchery says, I'm pro supernatural. Well, for what it's worth, we will likely play more than one foe, so maybe it'll come out. I'm favoring assassin. This is a cheap authoritarianism. So we got to give our assassin a name. So 1, which is soul. It's a good prefix. And 12. Solnora. Solnora. I'm going to roll for the title, but it's an assassin, so I feel like these titles aren't going to work. "12 is the brave. Well, it's definitely not going to be that. 21 is the tempest. Nah, neither of those works. Solnora, the silent. I'm going to say that. Witchery says, I'm always pro supernatural gestures to name. The assassin. Solnora the Silent. The assassin hired by some powerful figure in the political establishment that my project threatens. You know, Witchery, when I saw it was a D66 table, I was like, oh no. Witchery. Zombie Wolf says Umbriana. And then Rory should get the reference behind the name I suggested. You mean like Umber? Or is there something else I'm not picking up on? I will say, at any given point on the stream, I only have about 30% of my available brain. Which has gotten me into trouble at times. Streaming is a bit like driving, where like you can hold conversations and things like that, but like you're always doing about 4 things at once. You know, you're checking your rear view mirror. In this case, I'm checking like bit rates and stuff like that. Witcher says, I know there's no reason to hate them, but it just bothers me. As long as you know that it's like arbitrary, you own your tastes. The only thing that goes wrong is when people confuse their own tastes with like rules that other people are supposed to be following. Okay. We have our bonds. Make sure I'm not forgetting anything about them. Okay. I think actually we've done all our prep. I don't think there's anything else we do for prep. We don't have enough time to play around, but we do have enough time to write a bit in this world. Zombie Wolf says, it's the fully shaded part of a casted shadow. I don't think I actually knew that. I know umber the color, which is... I really thought Rory would get that. Sorry to disappoint. Unsubscribe. Dislike. Cancel Rory. Okay. So let's read what we have for our bonds. Under diamonds, it's Platonian the Ancient. He's our investor, an old friend of your fathers, of our fathers, who runs a series of vineyards. He believes our work could allow him to control the weather and temperatures around his vineyards and outgrow his competitors. For clubs, it's Solnora the Silent, who is an assassin hired by some powerful figure in the political establishment that my project threatens. For hearts, it's Rakamir the Grumpy, who's the diner archetype, a pioneer of the satiating arts and aroma design. For the spade, it's Krafeld the Diviner. He's our rival. He disagrees with our using natural forces for magic and believes this to be heresy. Instead, thinks all magic should echo a divine source. Our name is Hydrenius the Spark, a name we gained because we had some accidents when experimenting with plasma manipulation. And our goal is to find a way to prevent the endless winter prophesied to bring ruin to our people. Zombie Wolf says, the day I become a keyboard warrior is the day I've been assimilated. Yes, the older I get, the more I want direct and meaningful political action and not random comments on social media as my main interaction with political causes. But that is probably a common path for age. Resources. During a game of Grimoire, you will be required to manage resources to conduct research and to avoid consequences. I'm just going to read this. This doesn't really have any prompt to it, but we will need to understand it at some point, so I'm just going to read it out for you. And then we will try and write a couple of paragraphs just to get to know our character a bit. We don't have a ton of time left, and then I will have to boogaloo. There are 3 resources to track. Coin is a measure of your wealth. It is used to undertake quests or mitigate potential encounters or consequences. As we saw, we can pay off the assassin to not hurt us. Coin is represented by a whole number. For wounds, wounds represent physical, mental, or emotional strain your wizard has endured. Wounds are recorded as short statements such as broken nose from a rival wizard when the game directs you to. Your wizard can sustain 3 wounds. Any more and they perish, the game is over, which is another way of saying 4 wounds, you're dead. 3rd wound, you can still survive. And then corruptions. This is sort of the eldritch horror side of it. Jumpstore says, we will need to understand it. Me, oh dear. Dead. You don't need to understand it today. Actually, you probably don't even need to understand it at all. I mean, if you want to play the game, I guess, is what it matters. Or keep track of certain aspects of the game. Corruptions. Magic comes at a price. Corruption is a measure of how twisted your wizard's mind and body have become due to the exposure to magical energies. Corruption, it's body horror, basically. Corruptions are recorded as short statements such as scaly skin on my right arm when the game directs you to. GS says, night all, keep well, have to dash. Good to see you, GS. Take care of yourself. Your wizard can sustain 3 corruptions anymore and they lost. The game is over. If your wizard knows a spell, they can cast the spell to ignore some or all of the consequences of a journal prompt. If your wizard casts a spell this way, your wizard will gain 1 corruption. Okay. And after that, it gets to playing the game. Which is another whole thing, but we've done what we came here to do, which was set up the game. So let's set up a little scenario. How about we talk about the source of his name? The first time Hydronius heard the prophecy of the endless winter, an age of lifeless ice. No, I'll do that later. The first time Hydronius heard the prophecy of the Everwinter, he was an impressionable child. He stayed awake for 3 days. Terrified at all he might lose. Until he finally collapsed in exhaustion. And slept with his head on his mother's lap. For 16 hours. Now, whether every detail of this story was true, one can never be sure. Hydronius, or a Hydra, to his friends. Zombie Wolf says you probably don't need to understand it at all. He puts down pen and nonchalantly slides paper away. People taking notes on my stream? I find that hard to believe. Is that true? I think they're pretty intuitive. Like, I think you understand what a wound is, what a coin is, and the notion of corruption from magic. Like, I don't think those are particularly bizarre and new concepts. Well, whether every detail of the story was true, one can never be sure. Letters to his friends. was a talented wizard, but an insecure person, prone to lies that emphasized his endless distress. I just realized I left my air conditioning on all this time. Let's take that white noise out. But an insecure person prone to lies that emphasized his endless distress in all pursuits. Nevertheless, what we could know, looking upon his life's direction, just by looking upon his life's direction, is that the prophecy of Everwinter, of the Everwinter, truly did disturb the boy. The prophecy itself was an old one. It stated that in the year, in a 10-year period, Jumpstore says, I wish my air conditioner was white noise. Sounds loud enough to put a motorcycle to shame. Is it a window-mounted one? Because I find those ones rattle a lot. Tammy says they are taking out their puppers. Aww. Give them a little nose boop for me. The prophecy itself was an old one. It stated that in a 10-year period, the seas would begin to freeze. More and more each winter, until finally all water was as stone, and all grass wilted in the frost. One thing I will say, mine is quieter, but it's one of those like floor ones with a tube, and they're notoriously inefficient. So like it uses, because it's got just a big uninsulated tube, so that pumps the heat it's creating out. So no, it isn't window mounted, but also it just pumps half the heat it's trying to resolve back into the room. Finally, all water was as stone and all grass wilted in the frost. It particularly hung on the mind of the young Hydra, because in the year he had heard it, the sea for the first time returned a tide of slush. it was debatable what caused it, the tide. For the 10-year did not manifest, as the sea remained unfrozen the following winter. But Hydra was convinced and already pursuing the natural magic. Hydra saw them as a path to resurrection, a counter to the prophecy he felt so inevitable. Though the days grew colder as he finished his schooling, there were no indications of the Everwinter arrival. Still, fear is a bond as strong as any, and one disinterested in consideration. Driven, fear was also a powerful motivator. And in his obsession, born of nightmares, Hydrenius began work on the Grimoire to break the Everwinter. This is the tale of how he wrote his seminal work. To the ruin of much of his life. Jumpstore says, would that joke have gotten you demonetized if you read it out loud? Well, I'm not on monetized, so no. No. I don't even know if I'd want to be monetized. Like, I mean, on the one hand, it'd be nice to be able to pay bills, but the other hand, I don't know. I got a little anarchist heart, right? I don't know if I want to be beholden to the standards that implied by that. It's not even a problem. It's not going to happen. So to be demonetized, I think the minimum is you have to have 1,000 subs. And at my rate of like 100 subs a year, it's going to be like a decade. So I don't think I'm sure the number will change at that point. I don't think that's going to happen. For better or worse. Okay. We wrote a little bit there. But think of the taxes, Rory. So let's check back with what we came up with. And as I said, we'll come back to this next week, and I'll do a little more about the actual game itself, the game cycle. Witchery says, when you want to... by the way, Witchery, thank you very much for your donation. It was very sweet. It really sort of lifted my spirits. It just came through today, actually. I got the notification for it, but it just came through. And I was looking eagerly at my list of games I would like to play, but I couldn't afford on itch.io. But then I got indecisive, and so I picked one I already had from a bundle. But I really appreciate it. All right. If you're coming to this part of the show, it's because you just want to know what we came up with. And what we came up with was a story beginning, we'll say, because this is a two-part stream, because it's a bit of a complicated setup for this game, and I wanted to go through it in a way that everybody was involved. So most of what we were doing was setting up aspects of the game. And the game is called Grimoire. And the whole point of the game is we are a wizard who is going to build their own spell book and create their own spells. And there's a bunch of mechanics about creating spells we did not get to today, but we will next week. What we got to today was our bonds, so the people we know, whether friendly or unfriendly, and our name and our motivation. And then we wrote a little bit of text given our background. Yeah. And I'm going to read you sort of some of the stuff we came up with, and then give you a little bit of a teaser on what we're going to cover next week with the game, where we'll get to the actual game cycle. Okay. So the first thing is you have to come up with 4 bonds. 2 of them are friendly and 2 of them are enemies. They don't come up in the written part that I'm going to read in a minute. I'm going to read you a little bit of a story, the beginning of a story. But I do just want to read you some of the other stuff we came up with. Platonian the Ancient was a friend of ours. They're an investor, an old friend of our father's who runs a series of vineyards. And he believes our work as a spellcaster inventing spells could allow him to control the weather and temperatures around his vineyards and outgrow his competitors, rather. One of our enemies is Solnura the Silent, who is an assassin hired by some powerful figure in the political establishment that our project threatens, though we don't quite know why at this point, because that's the point of the game. You play through it as you go. Rakamir the Grumpy is a friend of ours, a pioneer of the satiating arts and aroma design, somebody we go out to eat with a lot. And finally, an enemy of ours, a rival specifically, is another magician called Krafeld the Diviner, and he disagrees with us using natural forces for magic and believes this to be heresy. Instead, thinks all magic should echo a divine source as a diviner. Our name is Hydrenius the Spark, which is a name given to us because we had some accidents when experimenting with plasma manipulation. Our goal is to find a way to prevent the prophesized endless winter that will bring ruin to our people, or what we call the Everwinter. And so I'm just going to read you a little bit of our intro, a little bit on the backstory of Hydrenius. The first time Hydrenius heard the prophecy of the Everwinter, he stayed awake for 3 days, terrified at all he might lose, until he finally collapsed in exhaustion and slept with his head on his mother's lap 16 hours. At least that's how he tells it. Whether every detail of this story was true, no one can be sure. Hydrenius, or Hydra to his friends, was a talented wizard, but an insecure person, prone to lies that would emphasize his endless distress in all of life's pursuits. Nevertheless, what we could know with certainty, just by looking upon his life's direction, is that the prophecy of the Everwinter truly did disturb and scar the boy. The prophecy itself is an old one. It stated that in a 10-year period, the seas would begin to freeze, longer and longer each winter, until finally all water was as stone and all grass wilted in the frost. It particularly hung on the mind of the young Hydra because in the year he had heard it, the sea, for the first time in his lifetime, returned a tide of slush. It was debatable what caused that tide, for the 10-year did not manifest as the sea remained unfrozen the following winter, but Hydra was still convinced and already pursuing the natural magics by that point. Hydra saw them as a path to resurrection, the natural magics, that is, and a counter to the prophecy he felt so inevitable. And though the days grew colder as he finished his schooling, in general anyways, there was no indications of the Everwinter's arrival, no frozen seas. Still, fear is a bond, as strong as any, and one disinterested in consideration, or self-reflection, I suppose. Fear was also a powerful motivator, and in this obsession, born of nightmares, Hydrenius began to work on the Grimoire to break the Everwinter. And this is the tale of how he wrote his seminal work, to the ruin of much of his life. Zombie Wolf says, random trivia. Dr. Horace Emmett thought that injecting yourself with red squirrel family jewels was the secret to eternal youth. A year after announcing this at a Cambridge lecture, he died of a cerebral hemorrhage. I have a theory as to what might have caused that hemorrhage. But of course, the red squirrel, I mean, who hasn't at some point thought, maybe some red squirrel junk, I should inject that. It's just a natural thought to have, but most of us, have a friend nearby or something who's like, well, it's been tried. Everyone knows about Dr. Horace. Witcher says, I have this problem with zines. I'm happy to give them away for cost, but then there's all these forms. Yeah. I'm dealing on a, I guess you would call it like a business level or whatever else, as if we are in a post-scarcity society when I am in a scarcity society. But I do appreciate it. And speaking of zines, I am, not working on a zine per se, but I am trying to teach myself some publishing software, as I mentioned before, so that I could publish that thing we came up with for Troves, because I don't want my delve to just be calibre text in a PDF. The artist in me won't let that happen. But then I also wrote new vehicle combat rules for D&D 5e because I hated the ones they had and it's bothered me for years. And a roguelike brawler setting for D&D 5e where at the end you can use it to buy rare items and you get to sort of randomly pick enemies out of books and stuff, and all of those I would like to put up as well. Zombie Wolf says, speaking of Grimoire, my Tabaxi Ranger, Tabaxi in D&D are cat people. To put it for people who are not prone, who don't know D&D, Ranger got her hands on the Necronomicon in my D&D gameplay of the Call of Cthulhu. She was still trying to master the spells before my group had to go on hiatus. Maybe they all disappeared into Eldritch Madness. Witchery says, did you see that Affinity Publisher photo and Illustrator? I have a free 6-month trial currently. I did, and I'll tell you why I'm taking a swing at Scribus, though I know it's not the best. Because I don't want to learn a system that I would then have to pay for. I would rather take the time to learn maybe a lesser system, but that I know I'm not going to have to pay for in the future. But it was a good recommendation, and I appreciate it. Okay, so next week, we're going to come back to Grimoire. But also, chat, you're going to let me know, either in the chat or in the comments below, whether you prefer it that I do the character creation on my own, bring an already prepped character, and we get straight to the game and do it in one stream, or whether you prefer that I deliver these games as we do like a setup stream and then a play stream. So I've now done it both ways over the last few months. I'm curious which one is more popular with my core audience, let's say. I already know how the algorithm treats repeated videos. Witcher says, oh, Lord Scribus. Yeah, I know. There was lots of things that are like, it works, but it's a heavy learning curve. And yeah. I can't even figure out how to edit text on a template in that yet, but I also haven't given it much of my attention. I'll figure it out. I figured everything else out. Zombie Wolf says, so you got into quite a bit of chaos with the Necronomicon. Seems like a lot of people like the setup and payoff. The advantage to the setup and payoff, of course, is that you guys, making characters is a lot of the fun of RPGs, and I feel like the other method robs you of it. The downside is if somebody clicks on the stream and they're like, I'm going to get a story, I feel like they don't get to see why people like this stream so much, because it's a lot of me explaining rules and then doing one sentence of inartistic writing, just sort of setting things up. It's a mixed bag, but I've decided that I'll just go with what my core audience wants, because there are a bunch of games, not all games are like this. Some games have really easy setup. But for games that are like this, that I've avoided doing because it's a lot of setup and then a lot of play, and I didn't want to spread it over 2 streams, I'm just curious what I should do. Witchery says it works, and then it has several asterisks, and then says technically. Yeah. We'll see if I just get frustrated. Zombie Wolf says, I like spending a stream to properly establish the characters in world like a session 0. Yeah. And then we look forward to the week to play. That's right. That's how I see it. And hey, I don't know what I want to do with this one, but if it ends up that we really like doing it, like if there's a lot of response in the chat, I would consider making this another like series so that we can sort of bounce around between series, because we have a few. But if not, then that's fine. Anyways, it's hot here, and I am I've got nothing else to offer you right now. But thank you so much to GS. I know you checked out early. Out there in the world, if Janera, Uncle Kitty, or even Lizzie Rose are out there lurking or watching this later, you were missed. I hope your times are going well. I should say Uncle Kitty each week says hello to the chat, so I pass that on. Uncle Kitty says hello to the chat. Jumpstore, I hope your headache continues to feel better. Witchery, I hope people make you a sandwich at some point. Find someone to make you a sandwich. At the very least, I hope you feel better. And Zombie Wolf, may there be many tomatoes. And may they all be dipped in the most bitter of olive oils. And of course, Tammy, I hope that you and your dog have a good walk. I'm sorry if you missed the outro. It was good to see you again. We'll be back here next week to make some spells. In the meantime, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Get out of my shop. Oh, that was loud. I apologize. But also get out of my shop.